So this is a story about the treasures of the gods, and in their godly work they do need tools, and this is how some of them, at least, acquired some of them, at least. And so our story begins with but one of the gods, who, in that beautiful moment between sleep and wakedness, climbed up his wife's back, finger by finger, hand by hand, and found her head shorn of his beautiful golden hair. Sif was bald. And in his surprise, the storm god woke his wife, and again her hands climbed up his, finger by finger, hand by hand, and found her own shiny dome and realised that she, Sif, was bald. Now, of course, this for her was a grave issue of absolute importance. For a woman then to have been shorn of her hair, she must have done something to deserve it, probably with somebody she shouldn't have done it with. And she could see in the storm god's eyes there was a storm a-brewing. He was angry, enraged even, and he had but one word for her: Loki. Who, at this point in the day, was still asleep. It was quite early and he was a little bit hungover. You could tell from the croaking yawn he gave as Thor's boot appeared through his door, smashing it to pieces, splinters all over his hall. And he heard that same one word, Loki, but then followed it more. Where is my wife's hair? That calloused hand around his throat, the air between his feet and the floor growing as he was lifted up. He stumbled and fumbled and mumbled through his words. I don't know. It was funny. It was a joke. I was drunk. Loki, where is my wife's hair? He didn't know. He could have lost it in the privy. He might have even dropped it on the way home. The point is, he could not find it. But he, being Loki, had a response. Dwarves. The dwarves can make new hair. The space between his feet and the floor rapidly shrank, and he felt his bones crunch as they collided with it. You will find my wife new hair, or, Loki, son of Lofi, I will break every bone in your body. And today that might take me 3-4 hours, but I will learn and I will get quicker. And then in 20, 15, 10 and finally 5 excruciating minutes, I will break every bone in your body. Get my wife some hair. With that, the storm god turned about face and left. Loki was alone. Putting on his magical shoes, the one that could take him across air and sea, he left. And across Bifrost, through the realms of men, and finally into the great caves inhabited by the dwarves. And he went to the home of 2 particular dwarves, whom he knew relatively well, but more importantly, he knew they did fine work. They were the sons of Ivaldi. Once at the front door of their forge, they welcomed him in. Lofi's son was always good for a few bob and definitely good for a laugh. Loki, son of Lofi, what may we do for you this fine morning? I need hair of gold, beautiful hair of gold that will take root and flow as though it grew there. Whoa, okay. I can make hair, I can take gold, I can spin it, I can work it till it's fine. But what do I get out of it? Ah, said Loki, the patronage of the gods, the adoration of Odin himself. And the sons of Ivaldi did fine work and they were well known, but there was always room to please Odin. And so they agreed that yes, they would make Loki some beautiful hair. So, lighting their forge, pumping their bellows, taking a block of gold and placing it in that forge, they worked. Spinning gold, pulling it till it was fine, and finally they had a gorgeous wig of golden hair which glittered in the sunlight. And then one of the sons of Ivaldi turned to the other and said, there's no point in wasting this fire. We shall make treasures for all of the gods. And so they worked, making a treasure first for Odin and then for Frey. These they gave to Loki, who left. Now at this point he could have gone back to Asgard. He should have gone back to Asgard, but here Loki saw an opportunity to curry favour with the rest of the gods. And so instead he headed through the rabbit-like maze of caves kept by the dwarves and found Brock and Atri. Now, he picked these because they were a prideful pair, but he also knew that they too did fine work. Loki, son of Lofi, what are you here for? Ah, yes, Brother Brock, I come with a proposition, a challenge from the gods. You see these treasures here? These fine gifts for the gods? I challenge you that you cannot make finer presents. And so Brock surveyed the items in Loki's hand and took from them a great spear, Gungnir. Turned it over in his hands, felt the weight of it, felt the balance. Finally, at the very tip, he looked at the maker's mark, saw the mark of the sons of Ivaldi. Striking the spear into the ground, he looked at Loki and said, I can make finer work than these fucking idiots standing on my head, but why would I? What do I have to gain from helping you? And Loki said, the patronage of the gods, the respect of Odin himself. And Brock laughed at him. I don't need the patronage of the gods. Look, my wares speak for themselves. I make finer treasures than any dwarf in this realm. But maybe we could strike a deal if you have something that I desire. And again, Loki said, well, I'm of the Aesir. I have treasures of my own. Look, my fine boots that can take you across the sky and the sea. I can give you anything you want. And Brock chuckled and said, I have no need of shoes, but I do need a good wine goblet, and I think your head would be ideal. Now, Loki didn't often wager with his own life, but today felt like chancing it, and so he agreed that if Brock and Eitri could make finer treasures than the sons of Ivaldi, they could have his head. So Brock went through to his brother Eitri and explained the wager. Eitri, always up for the challenge, started stocking the fires. He turned to Brock and said, I have some ideas, some items that I'd like to make. I'll forge them if you'll keep the bellows working. Brock agreed. So first, from his stockpile of items, he took a beautiful boar skin. Placing it in the forge, he told Brock to keep the temperature consistent. So Brock started pumping and working those bellows. And then, halfway through the process, he heard a distinct buzzing sound and saw across the forge a huge horsefly, which finally landed on his hands and bit at his knuckles until it drew blood. But Brock was tenacious, and he kept working and he kept pumping the bellows with utmost consistency until finally his brother Eitri led through a beautiful boar with bristles of gold. Good work, brother Brock. 2 more to go. Now this one is delicate work, so I really need the fire consistent. Are you up to it? Brock agreed. Into the flames went a beautiful piece of pure gold. Again, Brock starts to work the bellows. About halfway through the process, he sees again the same fly. This time though, it lands on his neck. And taking a bite, a great bite, you see the blood start to trickle down Brock's shirt sleeves all the way to his breeches as he works. But he is indefatigable and he keeps going. A few moments later, Eitri comes through brandishing the gorgeous armband Draugmir, the Dripper. Finally, he takes a huge lump of pig iron from his stocks. Showing it to Brock, he says, this is the finest work yet, so it really does need a consistent flame. Are you up to it still? Brock knows that he is. And so in goes the iron and down goes the bellows, and he pumps and he is working. But again, the same fly lands straight on his forehead. And clambering around, little fly Loki, finds his eyelid and takes a huge bite. Brock continues to work. And he's pumping and he's working, but finally the blood builds up in his eye and it's too much, and at the bottom of his stroke he takes a moment to wipe the blood and the fly from his eye and continues working. A few moments later, Eitri comes through and says, dude, what happened at the end there? The temperature was all over the place. I mean, it's okay, but it's not perfect. And there he can be seen holding Mjolnir, the great hammer, which, despite its gorgeous exterior and the mystic runes engraved upon it, has a handle which is ever so slightly too short. So, Eitri collects up the treasures he has made and hands them to his brother Brock and says, will you escort Loki, son of Lofi, to Asgard and display our wares? Brock agrees that he will. You see the fly just make its way out of the forge, and then in steps human Loki. Ready to go, lads? And so they make their way to Asgard, and finally there they are, in council, presenting their wares to the gods. So first, Loki presents to Thor the golden hair. He explains that this hair is made of fine spun gold, and when worn will meld with the roots of the wearer's hair in such a way that you would never know it hadn't grown there. Thor accepted the gift, called over his wife Sif. Removing the headscarf from her head, he placed the wig upon it, and the wig took root, and the hair fell like flaxen golden curls about her shoulders. She was enraptured. The gods applauded, and she turned and left to show her friends her gorgeous new hair. Next, Loki presented Odin with his gift. Well, actually he threw it an inch above his head. Gungnir landed in the boards. Odin took the great spear, turning it over. He saw how fine the workmanship was. Loki explained that this spear, when thrown, would never miss his mark. To a one-eyed warrior, that's quite a treasure. And also, it would never break. And finally, any oath sworn over this spear was unbreakable. Thor, looking at the length of it, confirmed that yes, this is fine work. Finally, Loki removed from his pack a piece of cloth. Nothing special in itself, but with a flick of the wrist it extended into a great ship, Skavlavnir. This ship was for Frey, and it could house all of the Aesir, all of the warriors of the Aesir and their arms and armour, and whenever you sailed in it, it would find a fair wind. Also, as Loki demonstrated, it could be folded back down until it was just the size of a cloth, small enough to fit in your pouch. Frey took it and exclaimed that yes, it is a fine gift, and yes, it will help him transport the Aesir. And then Brock stepped up, cracking his knuckles. Time to show off my work. And so first, he gives to Frey Gullinbursti, the boar. He leads it over and it starts to move around Frey, kind of sniffing at his knees, finally settling beside him. This boar can pull your chariot faster than any horse. Across sea, across land, across the air, it will never falter. Also, because of its gorgeous golden bristles, it will light your way. Niflheim, you gotta go there? That's fine, you will always be able to see with Gullinbursti. Frey is enraptured with his gift, he's so happy. Next, he gives to Odin Draugmir, the Dripper, the armband. Odin takes it and pushing it over his great bicep, looks at it and says, well, it's fine gold, but what is it beyond that? Ah, says Brock. Every 9th night, 8 rings of equal weight will drip from it. You can keep them, you can store them, you will never be poor. Or you can use them in your travels in the realms of men to pay your way. Either way, you will always have gold to spare. It's a fine gift, says Odin. And then finally, Brock pulls out Mjolnir, the hammer, and he puts it in front of Thor, who, taking it up, examines it. He explains that this hammer, when thrown, will never miss its mark and it will always return to you. That's handy for a man who's lost many weapons in the heat of battle. Also, you can hit something as hard as you like with Mjolnir and it will never break, it will never falter. Again, Thor looked down at his fearsome visage, his great muscles, and realised that this hammer would be indispensable in the battles to come. Finally, said Brock, you can shrink this hammer down until it's the size of the palm of your hand and store it in your shirt. You will never be out without a weapon if you have Mjolnir. All of the gods look over to Thor, and they all exclaim that yes, this is the finest gift of them all. Because with Mjolnir in hand, Thor will be able to protect the Aesir from any threat. Nothing can threaten them now that they have this. And so, Brock, smiling, pulls out his blade and says, well, Loki, it looks like your head belongs to me now. Loki, being the little shit he was, jumped up into the sky and bolted from the Great Hall, bolted from Asgard. Looking up, Brock entreated Thor, you have the finest weapon in all of the realms. Catch him. Thor took a moment to realise that actually he was being given an opportunity to use his new toy. And he was up and he was out of there, and moments later he came back with a bruised and bloodied Loki in hand and dropped him at Brock's feet. Again, Brock took his blade and went to take Loki's head before he said, no. You were allowed my head and by rights it is yours. But to get it, you're not allowed to damage any part of my neck. My neck was not in the wager. Brock looks up at Odin, who, smiling, says, yes, you are not entitled to his neck. That was not yours. Unfortunately, you probably won't end up with Loki, son of Laufey's head today. That's what happens when you make a bargain with the trickster. Again, Brock takes Loki, and with his blade he goes to pierce through his lips, and he cannot. Ha, yes. I also may have taken the precaution of protecting myself against blades. It seemed sensible. So finally, Brock, fumbling in his pouch, finds an awl, a tool used for leatherworking. And with a leather thong, he sews together Loki's lips, one puncture after another, until finally the trickster, son of Loki, cannot speak. And that is the story of how the gods came to have their treasures.